And we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the the coronavirus no bullshit episode. This will be a coronavirus-free episode. If you're tired of hearing about people can't get enough of wiping their asses left and right here for the last week and a half or so, you're going to find a comfort zone. God, I can't talk anymore.
We're here to entertain you, and hopefully
we're here to entertain the shit out of you. So that way, with all that toilet paper you do have, you have use for it now. Unless you want to build like a big ass Ford out of it or something like that, or a toilet paper fight or whatever.
I hope when hopefully all of this starts to go on the decline and everything gradually gets back to normal, that those people that are still sitting on 20 packs of toilet paper at least do something inventive with it. Go TP a house, build a fort, make statues or something. I don't know.
Or let everyone know that you were one of those morons who felt the need to just go out and buy tons of it because you felt the need to and you wanted to do it like everybody else did.
I'm just going to maybe go buy a bidet add-on for the toilet. That way I don't even need it anymore. All right. No more coronavirus talk. We're here to talk Masters and whatever else we want to talk about that's not real worldly stuff. Tyler, we're going to be talking about your mini comic. I know you guys talked about it before, but now you guys can actually see it. And then in the description below, you can actually download the images so you can have your own copy. It won't be a hard digital copy. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Clawful. Tyler wanted to break down his character, and I have a few questions of my own. Joe hasn't said anything yet. We'll give him the floor and let him talk so he can let us know who's here, and then we'll jump right into it.
Well, for the people who are here, we have Adam Gabbert, Christopher Dahlberg, Dingalorian, Fedmon, JSP, Jason Havlick, Kevin Sharp, Omegator, who was there and gone, Papa Hut 69, Zentron, and and Grimbot as well. I was doing the participant thing. And also for last week's episode, I said that somebody could win a copy of issue 9 of the Star Marvel. Well, I spun that wheel today, and Jeff Prime's the winner. So if you're listening, Jeff Prime, I don't know if you're on Facebook, but if you are, try to contact me there. Either way, I'll somehow get a hold of you. But I wanted to show Tyler and everybody something. I have one buddy on Facebook. His name is Mike Dye. And Mike Dye makes these really cool enamel pins. And I mean really cool shit. He sent me some because there was something I'm going to be sending him. So he's like, Joe, I'm going to be sending you something you might get a kick out of. Just to let you know, he makes a giant assortment of all these characters. And what pisses me off is right now I know Tyler can't see this. So he's going to have to catch it on a rerun.
Well, no, I can see you tonight.
Oh, so. You can?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's fucking awesome. Okay, well, this is going to be even better then. Oh, good.
Oh, Joe said fuck.
Oh, there's number one.
We ought to treat that when Joe says that. We ought to scream like a Pee-wee's Playhouse, like that's the magic word, the secret word. Ah! We ought to do that every time he drops like that particular word. Oh, that'd be awesome. Oh, by God, we got a new addition to the show.
We should find like some other Joe-isms and things that he repeatedly says and just change the word week to week. I like that. We'll do. Maybe I can make a graphic. Tyler and I can get in touch beforehand and be like, all right, what will this week's word be? And then I'll make it, and then when it happens, I'll find a way to just flash it on the screen or something.
Yeah, if Joe says like top ramen or dumpster dive or shit, fuck,
there's got to be a picture and a sound bite that he can play each time for each different thing.
And we ought to have like a picture of like a lot of the Pee-wee's Playhouse like gang, like Conky and Terry, like Joe said fuck,
I like that.
That'd be awesome.
I do like that. That's an awesome idea.
And Nathan could be Cowboy Curtis.
Yeah, I'll go. I could just post that picture from Christmas. That I have a family picture. I'll just post that one. There we go. All right, Joe, go ahead and show us what you're going to show us.
Well, the thing is, he makes, every Master Universe character you can think of, but the ones he sent me, what I like is because it's just not the ones that you see all the time. It's like, not here's He-Man and Skeletor, Joe, for the millionth time, but each one has something different to him. First, he did this really cool Cyclone pin.
Oh.
And he gave him these cool little goggles, but I was like, that's damn cool. I was like, as I open these, because just to let you know, I wanted to open them here on the podcast and look at them the first time. So this is my first time really looking. And I just noticed that the Buzz-Off has clear wings. I just looked at that. That is cool as shit. So he did a Buzz-Off.
That's kind of like, that kind of looks like a Baxter Stockman version of Buzz-Off.
Yeah.
He has this cool little design. And, now this is even cooler. This web store, that grappling hook has a chain. It's got a real chain.
That's cool.
That's cool as shit. And there's one I'm saving for last because I couldn't believe he sent this to me. He said, I'm going to send you random ones. That's why you get a kick. And then here's a Plundor.
Plundor. Holy hell.
So that's cool. And then the last one, I was like, no fucking way did he. Well, there's number 2. No way did he send this.
Ah!
Yep. Lizard Man.
Ah!
How cool is that?
Oh, dude. Why the hell didn't I get a free Lizard Man pin? Son of a bitch.
Some bitch. Yeah, so I'm going to let you know. You guys can contact Mike Dye on Facebook and Instagram. Just type in, well, how I spelled there, Mike Dye, just like that. Just type that in. And,
well, I mean,
yeah,
once again, Joe could have provided me links to put down below, but he fails to do that all the time.
I'll try to do that. Well, I'll try to have you insert a link later for those who want to catch it later, or at least on the rerun. But Mike, thanks for those pins there. Damn, these are cool. So I was like, man, I'm gonna have to order the rest of these suckers too. So yeah, I just figured Tyler. I was like, I know Tyler's gonna kick out Lizard Man because I couldn't believe.
That's awesome. And I do appreciate that because I want that message to spread to everybody who listens to this podcast that it's so much more important to dig into the mythology and just step outside that same damn box of He-Man, Man-Arms, Teela, Skeletor, Beastman, Evelyn again and again and again and again. That says you're. I'm sorry. I just don't respect casual fans because that's all they ever were into. Just the. I'm sure Nathan have a good insulting word for something like that, but I find it's like someone who comes up to Nathan and says, "Hey man, you like that there Roman Reigns? He's a good wrestler. You like him, Nathan?" And then Nathan takes a cup of shit in a solo cup and just throws it in their face.
Take her guy.
I think that is what
screwed, man. Take her guy screwed.
Yeah, that was the real.
Awesome
yeah.
Like with these pins, but just like you said, when people do art, I mean, of course, I love when people do Masters of the Universe art, but when I see something different, like when somebody does like, let's say, a snout spout in a cool ass pose, somebody that you don't typically see much fan art from, I'm like, that seems like it catches my eye more than just seeing He-Man or Stratos or Ram Man that I've seen a million times. Again, not that I'm discrediting what they do.
But if it's going to be He-Man or Ram Man or Stratos or Teela or Beastman, it better be, beyond badass for it to like stop and I'm like, okay, that's really cool. Because to me, it's just, and I'm like that with all various mythologies. From Thundercats, if someone's drawing Ninja Turtles, you'll grab my attention more if you're drawing Genghis Frog, Rat King, Ground Chuck and Dirtbag or Triceraton, or if you're drawing Thundercats, give me a Captain Cracker or a Bengali or something like that. It shows me that you're not just the guy that buys the shitty T-shirts from Walmart. That you're versed in it a bit. You don't have to know everything, but it's like, all right, you know what? That's cool as shit. You took time to draw a snout spout. That says a lot.
It does. So I appreciate it, and I want to thank you again, Mike. And as for anything topical, there's nothing really new beyond the Emerald City Comic Con had their exclusive Slime Pit He-Man pop and then 3 little Pez things, and that was it. So there's no new news, I believe, of anything else. Tyler, did you hear anything? Because I don't think there was.
I'm so far removed from anything and everything. I will say the way everyone's dropping like flies in terms of entertainment, I'm sure it's probably delaying anything coming down the pipeline He-Man based anyway. It's since Mattel pretty much just let out a really dry stinky fart at Toy Fair that wasn't very memorable anyway. I don't see us really hearing anything, even in terms of cartoons. It's something too. Where is that we have not heard any update about that other He-Man cartoon.
No, they haven't mentioned anything.
There has been no voice casting, no images, nothing announced about that. So
no, they're definitely, if anything, hyping up the Kevin Smith one, which I hope is good and they do some justice. But the other one, which we're assuming will be a kiddier version with maybe more computer type rendered graphics or whatever the hell they're going to do. No, we haven't heard anything. I'm sure eventually we will, but I'm thinking that's the one that's not going to be too thrilling. And as for Zentron having something that he wants us to cover, it'll be at the end because I want to stay positive this whole episode. And what he just said, that can be at the end with the Q&A because that's when I think I'll be angry, and I just don't want to be angry. But there's a comment he made about something which I'm sure you both have seen, but won't cover that till the end of the show.
Yeah, so, and people have some damn good questions this week. I'm demanding it of you. No, ask us what our favorite McDonald's toy is or something like that. I need in-depth questions this week. Get specific here, people. That's what arouses my brain is you get specific about your questions about He-Man. So I'm asking you guys out there to come on, start a fire here. Get me all roused up.
Well, speaking of getting you roused up and stuff and a fire, why don't you start off where we're going to start off with your mini comic? Because you and I used to piss and shit and still do all over that Leech mini comic from the past. And you were like, you know what? How about we do something right? We redo it, in which you and Karsten did together. And I'll pass it to you, and Nathan will start doing the flashing of the images.
Yeah, I got the cover up now. I guess the first question we'll get into in regards to it is how did this project come about to begin with?
Forgive everybody if you listened to the episode where we covered this a while back, but I'm this is just I try to add a new spin on it here. That way it doesn't feel like you're listening to the same damn story again. But the episode is up where me and Joe reviewed the shitty Leech comic, which I think did pretty good and it got a lot of attention. And it wasn't something I was looking forward to doing. I think it was Joe. No, it'll be funny. Like Peter Griffin or something like that.
You had to hit it.
And we just tore it apart because it was just a shitty story and shitty artwork and a shitty idea. It was incoherent drivel. And a guy named Karsten from Germany that Joe was already friends with asked me, why don't you write your own version of a Leech story, which is not something I'd ever thought of. I honestly, I was so unfamiliar with I had it as a kid, but I had no recollection of it. That's how memorable it was for me. Of all the mini comics I had, that's probably the one that and the Montana one, which is not any better. But it was just like, okay, if you could do a serious Leech mini comic, like what would you do? And he hit me up, I think, the day after we did the episode, or maybe that night after we shit all over it. And I think on Monday I started writing, and I was done by Wednesday. The whole thing, every panel that you see when we discuss this. If you own a copy, I did all the panels, the action, the poses, the dialogue, all within just a couple of days of something. I was pretty impressed because I had never given it a thought, and just. I was whipping it out. I was pretty much inspired by.
He was just whipping it out, everybody.
I was flopping all over the place, man. I was just like an unleashed fire hose of mythology just spewing out. And I will say, I was inspired because I'd watched Return of Swamp Thing and Beastmaster around the time that I had written this, and so I kind of drew inspiration from those two movies, along with ideas and thoughts from other movies that was okay, that would work cool in a He-Man story. I like that bit of dialogue. And it just, I wrote it pretty fast and pretty much nothing changed. And Karsten pretty much interpreted the entire thing into what we'll cover here. So it was not as in-depth backstory about how it came to be because it really didn't take long. And I'm not saying it's because I know what I'm doing. It was just it was just flowing naturally. It was really fun to, but, you didn't know if this was actually come to fruition. It's from some guy that Joe says, oh, hey, it's good. But, I've always been afraid to get my hopes up for something like that. If someone comes and says, hey, I'm going to draw your idea. Is this really going to happen? Is this guy just, blowing hot air? You had no idea about something like that. And he was spitting out the layouts quickly. I'm like, oh my God, this is really coming true. And sure enough, he sends me a bunch of these, and I start handing them out to people. And I think Nathan used it to wipe his ass with.
Yeah, well, hey man,
he could have been using it now.
I might need to. That we're all going to run out of toilet paper. But
yeah, and I tried to give one to Joe, but Joe was like, "You trying to say there's something wrong with me? I can't afford your damn mini comic?" I said, "No, Joe, I was going to give it to you for free to review." No, you son of a bitch! I don't want your damn comic book.
Well,
but it shows.
So I had to take pictures with my little little iPhone that I had at the time and send it to him through Messenger so we could talk about the damn thing.
But it does show how, just like you said, a shitty comic from the past, and that episode that you were talking about that we did, you really didn't want to do, it led to this. So it's like fate. Sometimes things you're put on a path for a reason, and bam, at least, like you said, you knocked out. And that's the other thing is sometimes I think when doing comics, if you get too many people, like you said, too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever, and that shit, it's like too much makes things overthinking, and it's like, oh, maybe we should change this and this, and that's why when it flows naturally, like you did, and when you and I sometimes will do something on this show, shows that, man, good stuff can come when you don't overthink it and have too many people doing shit, So, but
and that's what I feel like. And we'll touch on this after we discuss this too. But these stories don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be reinventing the mythology or bringing a new aspect to He-Man
and
the Masters
pages
of the
of
Universe.
dialogue for every single panel. It's like again, sometimes too much is, it's like less is more. Sometimes just, give us just little bits of dialogue, not a lot. But the thing is, like you said, we get to show it to everybody now, and also we're getting Nathan's perspective too. So it's making it fresh. It's still unique what we're going to be doing.
And I want to apologize too for like how the scanned images turned out. I don't have a printer and a scanner at my house anymore, so I had to actually go to my parents and scan it. And their scanner's not the best. It would only be like if Joe had a copy, he could probably produce a better scan of this. But it's gonna do okay.
I was gonna say if Tyler had an extra copy, but I know he probably doesn't now because now they are all gone. But if he did, I was like, I would accept one now. I'm over the.
Oh, of course you would. Now that I don't have it, except the one copy that I didn't think I was actually gonna. This I can't give away because this is all I've got.
She's like, yeah, no, you can't do it. But no, I've gotten over that thing because I know people try to be kind. I used to feel like people were feeling sorry for me, trying to send me shit, and I just had a weird, weird little thoughts of shit.
Yeah, we just picture like this little cartoon of like Joe is like a Charlie Brown character, and this black cloud's just like shitting on his head all the time.
Oh god!
All right.
Well, how did you? You want to go with it, Tyler, first, or Nathan? How did you guys?
I guess Nathan should kind of direct this because I kind of feel like talking. I kind of feel like I need to be coached to talk about it as opposed to
I'll we'll kind of go through because since I have the images up here, I can kind of walk through as I put the images up. So what I have here at the beginning, we have our little credits page. We have Leech kind of poking his head up a little bit, and then we got Cyclone and Man-at-Arms. So right off the bat, you said you had watched Return to Swamp Thing. Is that where we're kind of getting that aspect of your brain? When starting the story, you're like, all right, I want it to start out in the swamp?
Pretty much because I felt like Leech is... I mean, there's a Leech monster in the beginning of Return to Swamp Thing that shows up a couple times in that film, and I felt like a Leech monster's running around the swamp in that movie. We've got Leech, this big hulking mammoth of a creature. He should be in the swamp. And in Return to Swamp Thing, you've got some federal agents looking for moonshiners running around in the swamp. And they're getting picked off one by one by the Leech monster and eventually by Arcane's goons. And I thought, like, that'd be really cool. Like, to have, and I love Cyclone. And instantly, like, doing this, I felt like I had to work in the Man-at-Arms card back art, which is something that Carson, I think, had wanted to do on something else. And I worked that into the story. And he was like, oh, that's awesome you did that because I wanted to do that too, he said. So it was just kind of like taking that. It just kind of fit perfectly of like using Return to Swamp Thing as inspiration to work in the card art of Man-at-Arms being like attacked, where Leech is coming out of the swamp water and applying his mouth to like,
Which I'll actually switch to that image now where we kind of get like our Leech, the master of power suction unleashed, where he's got Duncan out of there, and we have Cyclone getting ready to attack him, but is quickly thwarted while Man-at-Arms is still hoisted in the air. So it's cool to see that your process with this is like automatically establishing how big of a threat Leech can be this early on in the book.
Well, and that's exactly what the purpose of these mini comics should be. And that's why some of them fail, is that they don't get the point across to the figure that they're being packaged with. The point of like the Battle of Roboto is to establish Roboto as a very strong, like heroic character, and Too Bad as a formidable foe that argues with themselves. He's got two heads. You're getting the point across in the book, and that's why I felt like the Leech mini comic failed miserably. And if it's going to be about Leech, he needs to have a large presence that can't just be easily dismissed. He needs to come in as a threat, just like getting over a great heel wrestler. You got to get him over strong. You can't have him go in there and he starts jobbing matches left and right. So it was quickly to establish Leech as a big threat that Man-at-Arms can be taken out so easily. And even Cyclone which was like, all right, because he's my favorite. I'm like, let's have Cyclone like put him over, so to speak.
Well, I like what you did there in the idea that he just sort of drops him and we get this shot of Leech squeezing his head, but we also get the perspective of what Cyclone is in for as well. That's well done.
Yeah, and that was just more like Return of Swamp Thing, the Leech monster. Like when he grabs a hold, like the last guy before Swamp Thing shows up. He's grabbing a hold of him, like his mouth is like dripping blood from like attacking other agents, and it was just like that's what Leech should be doing. He should be getting ready to destroy, any victim that comes in front of him. And that's when I feel like, all right, let's bring in Moss Man to be like Swamp Thing and just knock the shit out of him real quick, and get Moss Man in there. And that was another thing too. We kind of had discussed too. We wanted to use characters that were available in 1985. Because if you read the mini comics, you tend to see a lot of characters that were either in that wave of whatever year that figure was coming out and older characters. So that was why, you're not going to see Extendar and Snout Spout or Clamp Champ in here, because we wanted to present this as if it was coming out in 1985. So that's why I felt Mossman was a pretty good fit to have him come into the mix and kind of chase off Leech, but Leech successfully takes off Man-at-Arms, along with the Royal Guards that have already been abducted too, that had gone missing, and they just know that they had gone missing in the swamps. So that was to kind of like, all right, we got to get He-Man into the mix now too. So you gotta set that up as well. So it was, so yeah, it's just pretty much kind of setting the story up. It's a race against time to save Man-at-Arms and hopefully get the missing Royal Guards.
And hopefully, I like the you got to get it done and make it quick, because we don't know how many of these guys are still trapped or if any of them are dead already. So it's cool that you made it. It's like, well, yeah, we need to go get He-Man, which it's kind of interesting to see here as Leech is just sort of like carrying him off, and it's almost like Mossman and Cyclone are like, all right, well, he's already kind of kicked our ass. You sort of saved mine. We're gonna need backup. It's good that they didn't go after him again, because that probably wouldn't have turned out too well for him.
Well, no, like I said, you want He-Man to have a large presence, because I feel like sometimes, because He-Man needs to be the star of most mini comics, that and the character that it would have been packaged with. And yeah, they could have easily, because if Mossman can throw a tree at Leech's head, and Leech kind of wipes it off, like, okay, that caught his attention, but it didn't take him out. So you need to go get the big guns. So that was the purpose behind that.
And Joe, I'll get you in the mix as you're kind of reading along. What are your thoughts on it so far?
From the beginning, what I liked from the exact beginning is he didn't have to waste any time. That's the unfortunate thing that's done with a lot of comics nowadays. They would rather have people sitting around and talking for 10 or 12 pages till finally some kind of action starts. It starts right off. It's right in the mix. You don't need to hear a boring monologue. You don't need to have tons of pages of dialogue to see how they got to the swamp. They're there. You know what's going on. Tyler wrote it perfectly, so you understood that. And then within almost the first couple pages, you get more action than you might see in a whole fucking comic that's currently now out, or, that's out nowadays. That's what I liked, is it got right to it. But it feels...
I would expect nothing less from Tyler anyway. Tyler, ever since I've known him, has always been more of just like a very action-oriented person when it comes to movies. What's his favorite genre?
But it's also a good mix.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, though. It's a good mix. It's not like Tyler is just shoving like on every page. Oh, let's have a fight on every page. No, he understands that, yes, there's got to be action, but there's got to be a build-up. Then there's got to be a part where, as you see, they come back to the palace, find out the situation. You see Adam off to the side. He knows what's going on. He's going to get ready to transform into He-Man. But so you do get some dialogue. You do get the part where it's not all tension and all battle, but it's a perfect mix. That's what made the mini comics from the past so enjoyable. At least the majority of them, is they knew what they were doing, and which is something we might mention later about if we get into a discussion about comics in general. But it's a great mix, and like I said, little homages, little things. I like seeing even Bam, the Filmation version of the attack track in the mini comic, which is kind of cool because we know in a lot of the mini comics we had the toy attack track, so I like seeing that. And I know that Tyler, you'll have to tell me because I can't remember who it was, but didn't one of the winners? Isn't that why they had their face in this mini comic? Like people probably think that guy looks very detailed, who's stuck in the rock trap there.
Yeah, actually, and I know who it is. I cannot pronounce the guy's name, and I'm not even going to try. But if he's listening to this, he knows who he is. This is actually a friend of Carson's that Carson just threw in, I think, for fun. There was no winner for this one. The Clan Champ Ninja book, which I think it's pretty much safe to say is dead, unless somebody else wants to take up the challenge of putting it together. I don't think it's happening. But no, that was just a friend of Carson's that I think for fun threw him into the mix. He heard about it and thought it'd be fun to make him the incoming meal for the beast monster, which I thought was which I had written as just like a peasant that hadn't paid his taxes, like to the horde. That's what that was. It wasn't just like a random person. It was playing off the Filmation aspect that they're going around collecting taxes off of people, and this peasant couldn't do it. So he's picked up and taken to this particular fright zone, which I've always thought like this is kind of like their torture chamber, so to speak. It's off. I'd like to think that there's both, but this is in the toy line. You're going to use the toy line fright zone, and this is where the horde hang out. But in my mind, it's fun to think about like the big factory fright zone still around, and this is the place where you go to scare the shit out of people, man. I mean, it really live up to the name Fright Zone.
Yeah.
And they're using a cartoon attack track. I mean, that's how you get a group of guys around. It's to me that's the quintessential. It's like the killer whale in G.I. Joe or something like that. You can take a bunch of guys.
A lot more, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Cyclone could fly, but He-Man and Moss. I just feel like it's more logical when you got a couple of guys or a trio here going someplace. It just made more sense to me. It was more interesting to see that than the toy.
Okay.
There really aren't any vehicles that could, transport a whole group of heroic warriors anywhere. It's pretty much like a one ride show for the He-Man vehicles.
Definitely.
And speaking of interesting, I've already flipped to the next set of pages where it starts with home to many people, creatures, and oddities. It's kind of cool that how much you decided to open the world up and just have so many different things kind of going on as it's going through the story. I thought that was well done.
Yeah, because Tyler could definitely, he can explain definitely this reason how they got here. There's a particular reason Tyler wanted that shown, which, go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, and I mean, the logic is too, like, is this storyline, if I wrote this also as if, like, in chronological order, this is like if you're buying the toys, the Leech comic helps build up to the Hordak mini comic. So you're not that familiar with Etheria at this point. You're just if I could, I would have written the Montana book, and Montana would have been a spy showing up on Eternia and trying to kind of survey, like, okay, we can take this place. I'll report back to Hordak, but then he ends up running into He-Man and a couple of the heroic warriors. He gets away. And that's how they become familiar with the Horde for the first time. And then we lead into the Leech comic, gradually building up. I could have worked in the Grizzler book, but the Grizzler book's written perfectly. Didn't need to do that. But that's kind of how the direction for this is going. And the man-eating plant, which is something I pulled from the Golden Books, Tila's Secret, the big hardcover book. That was my introduction of how people could get to Etheria. It was this giant man-eating plant that Evelyn allows herself to be consumed by and is spit out at the Fright Zone in that book. But here, I just felt, I think Carson kind of set it up that the plant, you kind of come out of another man-eating plant. Swallowed. It's a secret gateway. And I can't remember what other piece of media uses this kind of. I'm pretty sure it's used someplace else. I can't remember though. It may have been in the Horde Golden Book, the big hardcover. It may be in that, but I deliberately pulled it, and you can actually see the beautiful artwork in Tila's Secret of Evelyn being swallowed by the man-eating plant, and that's where that comes from. And I just thought it was a fun way of getting them there without having to go to the sorceress, give us a gateway to Etheria. Like, this is kind of legendary. We don't know if it'll work, but this is our only way that we think we can get to Etheria, where we're told the Horde reside. And I wanted to work Imp in somehow, which I thought was kind of fun.
I like the little touch of. Yeah, I like that, and I like that he didn't just use the Filmation version of Imp as a rock, because Imp has had so many forms. But I like it's a little different, like almost a little tablet rock or something as a guide. But He-Man and them, they don't know he's a bad guy. I like that little touch. Is that how you described him? Did you want him being like a little different type of rock token, or is this
just as I didn't specify that he needed to be anything like Filmation, other than I wanted him to be the reason that they made sure they got to the Fright Zone, and Carson decides to draw him, as kind of like a flat rock, but that's on him. But I also wasn't specific that it needed to be this, but I certainly didn't specify it's got to be Filmation. Just something that looked like it was of another world, kind of like the walls in the Return to Oz that are speaking to the I forgot what the name of the king that in Return to Oz, like the walls speak to him out of rock and things like that. That's kind of something like that. But
was it also your idea for He-Man's pull the sword out of the sheath from the back? Was that your idea to have that be drawn in? Because sometimes in comics you'd see it, sometimes you don't. And I thought it was just
that's Carson. Carson made sure that was included. That was like you see it in the panel where they're standing all three, like looking around. Where do we go? Like, anytime the sheath is in sight, that's Carson just making sure that detail's edited in. So,
I did want to ask you a question up here in the top left when they're starting to have the conversation. This word bubble here is in German still. Do you know what that was supposed to say?
Yeah, that was a goof on Carson's part, because he's doing all this, and goofs are going to have. I think there's even like a 1 or 2 grammar errors in here too.
I was going to say, like, I noticed that in there, but I mean that's easily forgivable because you're looking at like a translation kind of thing, like English is not really his first language, right? So
yeah, but he does a pretty good job, and like I said, I didn't catch any of it. He didn't either until like well after I had received it, and I'm trying to think because the one I'm looking at, I think I must be looking at a corrected one, because he sent me like a second, like 2 or 3 batches of the books over time. Okay. So the one I've got has it corrected.
Okay. Well, what is
which panel? Which panel is it?
Well, it's in there in the top left where he's like, "Only fools seek the terrors of the Fright Zone," and then there's a word bubble coming from He-Man there in the bottom right corner.
Okay. Yeah. He-Man says, "We'll take our chances. Please tell us the direction it lies. We have no time to lose."
Well, what's the one?
There's
like,
a smaller
word. There's a smaller bubble word bubble to the left of
it's right next to Imp's face. Like the. Is there no? Maybe you're correct. One doesn't even have, but like there's Imp sitting there, and Imp says, "Only fools seek." Okay. He says this thing, and then right next to Imp, there's a little small bubble and says something like "Weird Geheimnis Idis Rada," but it's a small thing.
Okay, I'll show you mine here.
He took it out.
Yeah, he took it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So,
I got the
that was corrected. So I don't think it was anything. Yeah. Well, it doesn't add anything extra to the story, like by the way, head down that way and you'll see Glimmer naked or something like that. It's nothing like that. It's just a goof, and that's all there is to it. So no mystery there. Sorry, guys.
No worry. I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah,
all right,
that's all. So if anybody who has that copy and you're wondering what that was, like that, it's just an error, a printing error. That is it.
So I've already went ahead and flipped the pages, and we got them kind of walking towards the Fright Zone. And off the top of my head, the first thing I kind of gather as they're walking, I kind of got more of a Mortal Kombat vibe from this. Am I wrong in that, or was there something else that sort of had that inspiration for, like that first panel right there?
And this is my favorite page. Like I think of everything that we did, like this page of them heading on the path. That this was inspired by Beastmaster. When Beastmaster shows up to Auric and he goes down to the bottom, goes down the mountain and starts on the path all the way to the city of Auric, are these poles of decaying bodies line up all the way to the gates to the city. And I just thought, like, that'd be really cool as like a path to the Fright Zone, to let everyone know, like, this is, I mean, people don't walk out of the fright zone alive unless you're a member of the Horde. Like, just a constant warning that goes on and on and on. And the moat of tar that surrounds Ark and the Beastmaster, I felt like I could make that the slime, like where they get the slime for the slime pit is this moat that surrounds the slime pit that is just there, and they use that to pour into the slime pit, like and just put it as an inside thing, like it's not part of the story, but it was just there as like an Easter egg, like as a sign, like that's where they get the slime for the slime pit, like, and that's all it was, and that was inspired by the Beastmaster as well. And I had, and honestly, when I said I hadn't watched the Beastmaster, I was just thinking about it when I was writing it, and then I went back because Carson needed some clarity, so I went back and like got some screenshots of it, and he knew what I was talking about when I sent him like a picture of Dar going down the path, and you see the poles of skeletons and decayed bodies and stuff, and then the moat that surrounds it. So it all translated pretty well. So. And then just to see the fright zone, just like barren, like you could just hear like wind, like kind of blowing. That's all you can hear. There's no noise. It's just silence. You know, just really building up the anticipation of like, holy shit, what are we going to get ourselves into going here? So, just trying to pay the Horde some true justice here and build them up as the next big evil faction being introduced into the toy line in 1985.
And at
least it's still implementing the traps of, the fright zone with the rock there, but also having them trapped within the cage. I like seeing it. I don't think you had the tree do anything, but you don't have to have everything.
No, and I wish I had worked the tree in, but the thing is that Carson really wanted me to limit this thing to 14 pages, which is a typical mini comic. So to do that, it would have been eliminating another part of the story to work in, because actually what we got, I thought was going to get cut. Like part of the battle sequence of He-Man with the Beast Monster, and like all that whole sequence of Leech and Mossman fighting Leech, or Mossman and Cyclone fighting Leech. I thought some of it was going to get cut because I had written too many panels for one page.
And what we see on this pages that you got right here, and again, this is what I mean. You don't always have to have dialogue. Pictures can tell the story. And this, you were talking about your favorite part was just, the whole trail there of all the, the spiked bodies and stuff. But this was mine. I love the battle with that Beast Monster. I love how He-Man shoved that sword right up to the top there, and it's jumped up, slammed on the head. It came to the top, right through his skull, covered in blood. It's awesome. It just shows that, again, people say there was never blood in the vintage, Masters Universe stories. We already know there was blood in some of the stories, but I liked it. It wasn't over excessive nuts. It took care of that creature, but it was definitely a unique combination. I was like, don't think I've ever seen nothing like that. The sword up to the roof of the mouth and then slammed on the head and right through his skull. I like that. This was my favorite part, was this whole entire battle. It was
which I will say this, like, I have never gotten that much like feedback about it. Like, people have asked and requested for it. But the one thing I have heard from what few people like let me know they liked it, that was something that was pointed out. And really, it was supposed to be like lodged into his mouth to where he couldn't close it. That's the part. That's what I was really trying to get across. And I got that from Luke fighting the Rancor and Return of the Jedi when he puts the bone in his mouth. Yeah, it was supposed to be that, and then smash his head down, because that way he can't close his mouth at all. But you get the picture that it's stuck.
The only reason it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't bug me because, like I said, I seen in the Sunbird Legacy, I seen He-Man decapitate a snake, a big giant snake with blood pouring out. So I was like, it wasn't new to me. It was cool. I enjoyed it. Like I said, it's just telling a story without too much words. And yeah, again, these 2 pages have had more battle than recent comic books and other stories that we talked about. But again, I liked it. I liked that. That was my favorite part. I mean, I enjoyed the story as it is anyway.
Oh yeah, and I get. I mean. I'm proud of this sequence as well, and that's why I felt like it was all right to do this, because it's He-Man fighting a giant monster. It's not, impaling Leech or Hordak, because, you wouldn't do that in the toilet anyway. But I felt like you could get away with killing this. Plus, the creature never really got any use in the mini comics either. He was used once in the Montana comic, is that he swallows you and you fall out the acid into the fright zone. I'm like, that's pretty lame. This creature should be trying to devour people as a means of punishment. Or pleasure that the Horde like to dish out for themselves on poor defenseless, Etherians.
Because he's had a lot of different interpretations, from the mini comic, just some of the hardcover books, to even some of the, believe it or not, the coloring books that actually had stories, and he's been drawn differently. But you're right, he's a creature that I would have liked to seen more of, because it's always been kind of confusing when they would depict him. It's just different looks. There was never a consistent look. So it was just, I like that. I mean, I always love playing with the toy anyways, of having this creature. Like, we created more stories with our damn playset than you would get in the comics. But yeah, I'll pass it.
And I really wish this playset had been utilized a lot more in stories, because I felt like people have liked to, say it's not much to it, or some smart ass who deems himself as a connoisseur of 80s action figures will come along and start pissing all over the playset, saying, there ain't much to them there, guys. I don't know why you think there's so much of a holy grail of toys. It's like you clearly don't get it, jerk off. Like, there is so much.
We unfortunately got it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we unfortunately got that in the Mantenna mini comic, where it was based on Eternia, but it's like, that's not a great comic to really reference anyways. No. Not many people enjoyed the Mantenna one, but I would have loved to seen more of it too, because the toy unfortunately just got a bad rap. They said, it sucks, it's nothing like Snake Mountain or Castle Grayskull, you can't do much with it. But actually you could with the toy, and then if you put it into a mini comic, at least give it some kind of depth, or where, like maybe where does this lead to, where does this go to, which we've seen some stuff. But you're right, I would have liked to seen more of that, and sadly, we didn't get a lot. We got some, but not a lot.
And Nathan, you got anything?
I'm kind of looking here at the last couple pages. I think it's cool that that Grizzlor shows up. I kind of wish. I think I kind of wish he would have hopped in a little bit on this fight. So I wonder what was the plan with that? Did you just want him there to have him there? Or was he kind of like, because he does just kind of appear out of nowhere, so I was kind of...
Yeah, the point of this is this was to help lead it for the Hordak mini comic, the Hordak, the Ruthless Leader's Revenge, because in that he sends Grizzlor to Eternia through the portals that only open up after a certain amount of time. I can't remember how long, but he instructs Grizzlor to go. So in this, it was to help set up, why Hordak is doing that in that mini comic, right. Like. It's set up like, okay, at last the portals have opened, and Grizzlor, go fetch one of Skeletor's warriors. Like, it's to tie in that story. Like, we're building up to, Hordak wants to invade Eternia. Go get me somebody. And that's why he says, tonight you have a mission. My race.
Give him like a little continuity, too. I like that.
Yeah, that's all that was for. And it was to, this was all inspired by Thulsa Doom and Conan the Barbarian, when he says, help him. When he's telling Thulkum to help Rexor up, and he goes over and looks at the beast monster, like, because Thulsa Doom was pissed off that Conan killed his giant snake, and he walks over and sees the beast monster dead, like his pet, and like, I'm going to kill them all. And instead of so his little monologue he gives about how he's going to seek revenge on Conan, Valeri, and Subutai, like, I kind of drew inspiration from that. Like, Hordak is like, I'm going to get them all. I'm going to invade Eternia. They're all drowned in the slime pits. Like, that was my inspiration for that. So it was really just playing it up serious, and it really was to read this mini comic and then open up your mini comic compilation book and start reading Hordak, the Ruthless Leader's Revenge. I threw the Wraiths in there, him saying Wraiths as a Easter egg to the 2000X series to kind of tie a little bit of that in together, because... Not that they were ever in it, but he says race. It could be anything, but it was meant as a nod to the Horde race in the 2000X line that people seem to gravitate towards. So it was just trying to be a little all-encompassing here.
A couple little Easter eggs to different parts of our...
Which I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't catch a lot of them, because they're very... they're not like, hey, you see this? It's, not everybody thinks like I do when it comes to He-Man, which I understand that, which is why
you won't hear a lot of people mention MYP too much. But I mean, for those though that know MYP, I'm sure when they did see Wraiths, I'm sure in their head they're like, "Hey, I know what he's talking about." You'd at least assume, I would think.
I would hope, and if you people had this book, it would have been nice to hear some damn feedback from some of you people out there.
Well, maybe now we'll get some feedback from us revisiting, but you could pop us back up on now, Nathan. But yeah, maybe we'll actually get some more feedback about it.
Well, now people can actually... Wait, that's the two-person one? There we go. There's a 3-person one. But now people can actually go down below in the description. I'll have that going forward from here on out down there if you guys want to go ahead and download the digital version of everything you've just seen, to just kind of have it and peruse through at your own leisure. It is down there.
I appreciate you doing that, Nathan. Yeah. And thank you guys for wanting to do this. This was Nathan's idea. This was not mine. So I don't want people to think that I was trying to come in here and inflate my ego more on the podcast.
Yeah, it was my idea because now that I can actually put images on the screen, and when we do mini comics, like, we go through them so people can actually see it as we're talking about it. And when you guys did this before, you were just kind of looking down at your own version and just talking about it. I want people to actually be able to see it because not too many people were able to get a copy.
Yeah, and it's good for people to, to validate, to look, people, I mean, this is a small example, but I can write. I can, I'm not just talking a lot of shit here, people. Like, this is one example that I can back up what I say here. I have no degree in writing or any kind of background in writing. This is just strictly fan fiction, if you will. But, given the opportunity or something like that, I can write a pretty damn good story. And I got a whole bunch. Like I said, I issue the challenge out. If there's a good artist who would love to do another one, or the Clamshell Ninja book, which I really don't think Carson's going to do it, or at least finish it. I'll just put it that way. I bet Joe's secret stash of top ramen noodles chicken flavor that it ain't happening. So,
ooh, damn, that's a lot too, boy. That is a lot there.
I think Kevin Sharp was in the chat earlier, right? Kevin,
he was here to
take
start
the challenge.
Yeah,
yeah. It'd be great because not to cut you off, but it's what Tyler was saying. He just said he didn't go to school for writing, and it just shows. You don't have to go to school for writing to do something great like this. Sometimes it's just, I think if you're just a passionate fan, you understand, the mythology of what you really love. You're passionate, you're going to do something great, because Tyler had something like he wanted to discuss of, like, I believe you said, like, what makes a good mini comic? Is that okay? And, for me, I'll just be honest, and this isn't no way trying to tie into what Tyler just wrote, but definitely having at least knowledge of what you're going to write, but also, it's what I said at the beginning. When I'm looking at a mini comic, or even a comic in general, I just hate it when they take forever to get to the point. They think that so much backstory, dialogue to lead up to a point is interesting, when in fact, for me, it bores the living hell out of me. Then when they finally get to some action, you might see a page of it, and half of it, it's not inspiring. There's nothing fantastic about it, but it's a good balance. You got to have a great story. You got to have some good action, and also, yes, the art has to be good. But here's the thing: there's comics I looked at before in the past where the art was amazing, but the story was so fucking horrible. There's number 3. That it was like, I never wanted to revisit it. I was like, I don't care if this art's good. This story sucks. But I'm not saying, okay, give us crappy art. I'm just saying a good balance. But definitely have something that draws your attention to where you want to come back and read this over and over again, and it's believable. You feel like you're living this story because it's written so well. So a great combination of, like I said, a good story, good art, but you don't have to have so much dialogue. You don't have to have backstory. You don't have to lead up to nothing to where it's that climax. You think this is going to be great, and you have a page of one action or two, and then you're left just wanting more. I don't want that in a comic. I want something with, again, it's not tying into what Tyler did, but yeah, what Tyler did. He's did what we've seen in the past, a story that you want to go back, and you have that beginning, middle, end. I don't want to be dragged out for 20 issues to see what's going to happen. He proved it right there. It can be done in one issue, and hell, 14 pages, and you enjoyed it, and you can relive it anytime.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I think with anything, too, and you got to think in the mindset, obviously it's different now, but the mindset back then is like, well, to me, I think you would want, especially when it ties into certain characters, because you're making the mini comic and packaging them with specific figures, that you want it to tell a story to where having that figure in your hand, you're like, oh wow, like you're excited about it, and you want to go like reenact that with your other figures, kind of thing. I want it to, and you want it to just sort of spur the imagination, kind of like it's done for you guys, like especially with Tyler. Like, he has grown up with this, and loves it so much, and he takes all those different aspects and can put them into a story, because those stories were capable of like making him use his imagination. Well, what would I do with this character? What would I do with this character? And that's when you know you've done something good.
Yeah, it's we harp a lot on the old stuff a lot on this podcast, and we've gotten some shit for it at times. And I don't. Maybe we don't explain our reasons why. We focus on the vintage because, I speak from I don't know. I think Joe pretty much is aligned with me, and Nathan is kind of rediscovering a lot of this stuff. And Nathan's vocal. If Nathan doesn't like it, he'll say, it sucks. Yeah. And I called him out on it, and he's kind of come around on some stuff that he's, knocked. But, we're all adults now. Like, we can't go but so far with nostalgia and just look at something because, I loved it that much because I was a kid and I loved it. The mini comics to me, as much as I loved them as a kid, I read them now as an adult, and I look at them as an adult. And even though, like, when Robbie London was on and told us, like, he didn't like Diamond Ridge's appearance and why, like, I'm looking at it completely different than how he looked at it, and, we look at these stories is that they got the point across. Like, I go back to Clash of Arms, which we'll tie into later on in this podcast, but it introduced characters that I didn't own as a kid, but it also helped, like, it came with Fisto, and I also got Whiplash at the same time. So that story introduced me to these characters, that these are imposing villains, and they beat the shit out of this heroic Fisto who's still fighting again. It got the point across. I read that as an adult. That's a classic story. That's a genuinely good story that you would want to see in a movie or in a comic book now, or that you could see in a Conan novel or a fantasy story of some kind. Like, it's a story that's simple. What draws our attention to a lot of these characters is that they look like, oh man, I want to see these guys kick each other's asses. As a kid, we're just, wow, look at all these people. We look at things so much more differently. And, there's many comics I didn't have as a kid, like Search for Keldor. It's a wonderful story that gets a point across with all these small hints. And, I did have it as a kid, but I had no real recollection of it. So going back and reading it as an adult, it means a lot more because I got even more so what they were trying to do. Clearly, the guys who write these stories, they're just trying to add some mythology for the kids that if they're not in the cartoon or any other form of media, it gives them something to go by. They all say, like, kids really get into it if they have a mythology to follow along with it. And that was such an important aspect of He-Man that if they weren't in the cartoon, they were in a mini comic for the most part. And, we're looking at this as great stories. I don't think, we touch on it that we loved them as kids, but we discuss them as adult fans reading it with adult eyes. So we're not, our points of knocking the new stuff. It's not because it's new. It's because the quality is just not there, people. If I question because, Kevin Smith's working on He-Man, because I question his quality of work in the many, many years, which makes you think, why the hell is this guy in charge of a lot of decision-making with He-Man? Not because it's new, and these stories, if they weren't that memorable, they wouldn't have been celebrated on various websites, and He-Man.org wouldn't have took the time to scan every single one of them so you could read. Like, not everything is scanned for you to read the whole thing, but the mini comics and the Star comics are all scanned. I think a few other things are. Dark Horse took the time to put together a compilation book of all the mini comics from the vintage line, She-Ra, New Avengers, and some of those shitty ones that came with the classics. We pretend like those pieces of shit didn't exist. Because the quality's not there. Not because it's new. It's a terrible story that pisses on the idea of concluding the Powers of Grayskull storyline, which we were duped into believing we were getting. So it's
we've said it many times. I mean, again, when we talk about MYP, the cartoon, we didn't shit all over that. You know, are there some episodes we don't like? Yeah, just like
Yeah.
Filmation. There's
There's
episodes we
some
don't like.
shitty episodes of Filmation,
Oh
without
yeah,
a doubt.
definitely. No, without a doubt. And even as we said, even the vintage mini comics, there's some that are bad, which led to this one that you did for Leech. But that's what we're trying to get across is we don't try to piss all over the new stuff. It just, a lot of it just really isn't doing it. It ain't hitting it right. It's not enjoyable. And there's those that do like it. But when it came to MYP, you'd think that, oh, if we only liked the past, we would have shit all over MYP. Didn't do that. I quite enjoyed it a lot. And I loved all the MVC comics that were coming out too.
Yeah.
I missed those. Those were great. So yeah, it's just, you're right. I know it seems like the new stuff is bad, but a lot of it is bad. And as for everybody,
look, people, you know, I'm not saying you got to go back and listen to every episode that we have done, so that way you hear our validation that we know what we're talking about. I don't mind reiterating this, you know, because sometimes not everyone has listened to episode 15 of Fans of Power back when we only had audio. You know, it's just, it comes down to quality, people. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, hell, when DC launched or announced they were doing a new comic that was going to be coming out in the summertime, with that really shitty 4-part storyline where everybody's got amnesia and the sorceress is dead and Skeletor decides to leave Prince Adam alive even though he knows his identity. What the fuck, man? It makes no sense at all. You know, yes. You know, and it was just, but up to that point we thought we were going to get, hey, DC's doing a new He-Man comic, and you saw the first image of the cover, like, this is going to be great, and you saw the first issue, I'm like, oh my god, and they've redesigned the characters, and they look like shit, and they kill off the sorceress. What the hell for shock value? Because they got a guy who doesn't know anything about how to write a good damn story.
I'll do what I usually do. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. I would think that it would have to be hard from their perspective to basically get that thrown in their lap, and they're like, hey, this is what we're doing. These guys are working on this. We want you to work on it. And they're like, well, I don't really know much about this. Just get it done. Here's the deadline. Like, I mean...
Which, yeah, and I understand this probably happened a lot, and I that's why, like, I'll only blame the writer but so much, but DC is ultimately making the call of putting this particular individual who's either not a fan or is like, oh, I remember He-Man, that's kind of cool. Yeah, sure. I mean, I really want to work on Green Lantern Corps, but, I guess I'll do
honestly, it would be like if I was an artist and DC came up to me and was just like, here, we want you to do this Master Universe book. I'd be like, fuck, man, come on. Like, I would be sitting there, I'm like, well, Tyler and Joe are well-versed in this. Yeah, but, Tyler's working out and Joe's, like, eating from a dumpster. We need you to do this. And I'd be like, and I would probably turn out a shitty product. Like, that's the way it is. But I'm totally with you. They need to look at it more on a basis like that. Or I think Joe and I were talking about, and maybe it was when you were on here last, Tyler, that it would be kind of a cool idea if in the community, like, there could be a place where, not just like a forum or anything like that, but a place where people could actually, like, if they've typed up something or whatever, they could put it there and people could actually look at that. Maybe if it's people from DC or, like if Val could drop in and look at things and give pointers on stuff, or Kevin could be like, well, I've been in the industry and this is what I look forward. I'm going off of a story and people want me to draw stuff. And I think there needs to be more of a community that can band together to kind of like open up everyone's creativity within. That way everyone feels a part of it. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. I'm just throwing out.
That would be a real dream, but it's also a sign that DC doesn't care too much about this property, and they haven't for quite some time, if they ever have to begin with. Other than, how many more times they're gonna, throw it. Hey, we're doing another one that's not doing very well, but people get excited about that first issue and it continues to fail. Mm-hmm. Or in terms like, I don't care how well it sells. None of these books that have come out since they did that relaunch back in 2012 or something like that, none of them have had a lasting impression on the community. Like, the community itself is not going by this new mythology. They're not going by the inclusion of Sir Laserlot in those digital mini comics that you could download. Like, you can sit there and say, oh, they sold well or whatever, but they had no longevity.
Right.
We're not talking about it on this podcast, not just because it's new, because they sucked. You don't see a lot of fan art for Sir Laserlot. You don't see a lot of fan art for a Beastman with the Mr. T Mohawk, or the real shitty redesign of Evil Lynn, or just that whole storyline in general. It's just, I know is they did the Eternity War and way before I'd already checked out. But I know there's some people who like that. I look at it as like, oh God, no, I'm not. You're not suckering me in. I'm not going to continue to give you my money. If you couldn't deliver on the basic story, why the hell would I think you could put anybody on these books?
Do you think that it's more of an attempt to, because it kind of swings both ways, I guess. If these guys were to just play it safe and ride the line, then people would be complaining that they didn't do enough. So I don't know. What do you think would be the best course of action with
Well,
it?
I think the biggest is people don't have a real good conception of what He-Man and the Master Universe is to begin with, which is why we get all these really ridiculous stories of hints of, oh, they watched NYP because they're shitting on Mechanic, or they're writing Tila to be the ultimate bitch because they watched 2000X, or they throw in references to 2000X. So we're clearly dealing with a single age demographic writing these books. We're not, and even like, I don't, like we like to make fun of Scott Knightley because I had Stratos as a kid. Oh, put that guy in charge as brand manager for He-Man. Like, he may have the work ethic, but he's not, he's not a writer. It's just not the right man for the job. You can be a big fan of the property. I'm a big fan of G.I. Joe. Should I be writing G.I. Joe comics? Hell no, I'm not the right guy for that. I'd rather be entertained by that. As much as I could probably write Thundercats. But, I feel like there's a lot of other properties like I don't think I would want the responsibility of writing Turtles because I just don't think I could do a really good Turtles story. I'm not, it's willing to admit that, you may be a great fan of it, but should you be, a director of a film of this, or should you be writing this, or should you be, illustrating it if you're not a big fan of it? Like, I know you need a paycheck. You're doing it for a paycheck.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that. Whether your art is good or your work is questionable, you're doing it for a paycheck. It's hard to argue that perspective. But I just feel like, no one's really taken time to understand this mythology and why it's still hanging around on the internet all these years later, why people felt the need to get the license to, release, little mega constructs here. I should have took a picture of me. Hey, check out my latest haul here, guys. I went to Walmart. Look what I found. Like it and comment below, guys. Stupid.
I think what kills it for
but it's just like
comics,
taking time. What? I'm sorry, Joe.
No, I think what it is with the comics is, as you noticed, almost everything for all these recent Masters of the Universe comics, every one of them was basically, the majority was either a crossover with another property or a very long, dragged out story arc because they want to hope you keep coming back each month, but unfortunately,
You gotta sell them variant covers, damn it.
Yeah. And they keep losing fans instead of gaining fans or keeping those fans there. And even like the recent one that they're doing right now. Okay, it's not crossing over with anything, but again, it's another story arc. I wish, as for me, to be honest, as a Masters of the Universe fan, I love to see them have some faith in us and try to have faith in the product and try to deliver one-off stories each month and occasionally maybe a two-part story arc or 3, but not a 6, not a year, not 16 issues, and see what fans think of that, because I feel like they try to drag and hold us along so much that it becomes a boring story. And also, you notice this a lot of times when they're doing the stories, if it's a long story arc, they're getting different artists. So then you're going from this art to that art. It's like, God, this doesn't feel like it's one cohesive story, even if maybe they might have the same writers, which sometimes I know they don't even do that. But it's like, there's so many damn people doing this. It's like, I don't feel like I have a good story. I have 16 issues of so many different people working on it. I want to see one thing where it looks all the same, but I would love the confidence of one-off stories. That's why I did enjoy this so much, Tyler, what you did with the Leech mini comic. But I'd like to see that. Yes, I understand that now almost all comics and from Marvel and DC, they like their story arcs. They like their continuity. Sure, have some, but I would just like to just go back like how it used to be. Have a good story. I read that and it's like, hey, I can go back to this. This is what happened from here, here, here. Not like, did you remember in issue 4 when this happened that has to connect to issue 8? It's like, fuck off with that. That's the stuff that gets on my nerves. So there's 5 for you.
Well, yeah, and really, like, He-Man could work in some story arcs, but we're also used to one-off episodes and one-off stories, and that's from the mini comics, the Star comics, the Golden books, the Ladybird books, They all have finite stories that we all like to go back and revisit in episodes that are wrapped up in one episode. We got 1 2-parter. So we're used to that because we feel like we don't need. I mean, even though it leaves us wanting more, which is why we're constantly coming up with fan theories and thoughts, and like we wanted to see more Chakotay, we wanted to see more Lizard Man and Fang Man and Strong Arm, and I think that's what's constantly kept us hungry for this stuff. And you bring these guys in who are being instructed to drag it out for 6 months. We got to get a lot of really shitty chrome covers, and we're going to bring in this one guy who draws really ugly to do some cover art for issue number 3. And God,
multiverse should not be 6 issues. It could have easily been condensed down into probably 3.
Well, hell, yeah. You used to be able to do some stories in 3 parts.
Yeah.
If you were actually going to set aside and do a brief mini-series, if it wasn't in the actual flagship book that went on, like a story that you're going to wrap up in 3 issues and move on to a single story, and that goes from from Spider-Man to X-Men. I'm more Marvel-based anyway when it comes to reading comics, but it's the comics industry got started and flowed naturally and successfully and profitably on single stories. Yeah. Like there's there's moments of continuity, like mentioning Peter Parker's college roommates and stuff like that. But it's a finite story.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like it's cool if in issues down the road you kind of reference something that happened before. Yeah, but it doesn't all need to be like one continuous thing all the time.
It just becomes fluff that you guys are devoting this podcast to letting everyone know, hey, look, here's another shitty issue of this multiverse that
we got to see that through, right, Joe, till the end.
How many more is there to go?
2.
2 more?
Yeah, man. I'm waiting for the big reveal where Wonder Bread He-Man ends up being triumphant and bringing everything back together.
I think we better get to Clawful. Yeah. No. That's just Nathan just bringing up something nuts. It's
I can totally see those assholes trying to find every bullshit variant, and I put that in quotations, of He-Man.
Yeah, no, because Wonder Bread He-Man will trot out, and they'll be like, "Who's that? I've never heard or seen him before." And then he whips ass and then just disappears.
Don't give me any ideas. I think before we get to the fan questions, we might as well, because we actually, looks like this will be one of our later ones. We'll go to Clawful, but I think the reason we're revisiting this mostly than anything is we always want to hear what you have to say, Nathan, because, me and Tyler get real passionate about Clawful, especially one of his main appearances in a certain mini comic that's one of the best mini comics they did.
Yeah, a certain mini comic that is right on my phone and has been for quite a while.
Yeah, so we definitely want to hear your thoughts on Clawful.
Well, I mean, my thoughts immediately are why was the design in Filmation just drastically different from like the figure in the mini comic and basically any other kind of media that had been put out? Was this more of a thing of they already had that and they were going, and then the figure and stuff rolled out after the fact?
Pretty much. That's pretty much what like Tongue Lasher shows up in She-Ra. That's kind of what he was looking like in the preliminary developments of that character and Filmation.
Vastly different from the toy,
yeah. That's just one example. Dial-A-Mug's another one. Like the Dial-A-Mug figure was designed, and they put him in She-Ra. And even though the figure never came to fruition, but his essential design was like completely different than what was showed up there. Hell, the connection of Whiplash or Lizard Man started out as a villain, and they decided to make him into a hero and took the initial design of Lizard Man. That evolved into Whiplash. So the original Lizard Man characters, evolved into 2 memorable characters. Thanks to James E. Talk. You can check out his YouTube channel, and there's a video about that evolution of the character. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty much. I haven't seen any of the original artwork of Clawful, other than I've seen like prototype art of the figure, which looks closer to what we got. But I have not seen any sketches or drawings of what they had come up with in the original designs of the character. But typically, a character that Mattel gives to Filmation, like here's an upcoming character we're looking to put in the toy line. Like Colonel Blast became Rio Blast, but they took the evil design and put it in the She-Ra cartoon, but he became a heroic character in the toy line. So I would bank my entire collection. That's probably the reason why Clawful looks so different. Even though as a kid when I saw him, I thought he looked pretty badass, and because he was depicted in Driel's Return as a very take charge villain with the menacing voice and threaten to kick Trapjaw's ass. I'm like, oh man, this is just like how I saw him in the mini comic.
Well, I'll go ahead and ask you this question then, because I basically, in order for me to prep for this, I just read the page in the compendium book. What were the opinions of his portrayal in 2000X? Because they seem to make that sound like they made him like a big doof-ass, so...
They made him an oaf, which you hate. It's like they always want to do that typical. They're like, okay, if this guy is big and muscular, he must be a moron then. I hated that because in Filmation, you had a sinister version of Clawful that was highly respected by Skeletor, unlike a lot of his other, cronies where he, disrespects them. But then you get him in MYP, and yes, he looks badass, but they oafed him up, which pissed me off. And he's so stupid that he doesn't even understand his own language in MYP. It's like, God, I couldn't stand that. Great design, but damn it, why did they have to do that?
I remember my brother laughed at me when he started talking because he knew how pissed I was. My brother was just kind of waiting for me to be upset about certain stuff. And when Clawful started talking, he looks over me and starts laughing, and he could see the look on my face like, oh my God, what have they done? And it was so disheartening. Because when they released the promo image of the Evil Warriors in the promotional images, and then the first teaser trailer, there was a quick glimpse of Clawful charging into battle. So fans were like, Clawful's in it, Clawful's in it. It's like, oh my God, one of my favorite Evil Warriors is going to be in the series already. And he goes, it's not working. And I was just Keanu Reeves all over again.
I wish I could have just been sitting in the room when that happened. I would have just laughed maniacally at you.
God, it was awful. It was so bad, And
I've never heard anybody speak highly of that. When he talks like that, everybody was pissed because they loved the design. They heard him speak and the way he acted. You can't enjoy that. At least with Whiplash, they try to make him look super menacing and intimidating in his kind of battle cry and the way he would scream, almost dinosaur-like, if you will, whatever. But, when it came to Clawful, I was like, no. Because, again, we loved him in Clash of Arms. He's, like I said, he's having his nice battle with Fisto, and he's taking it to him. So I loved him in that. I loved him in Filmation. I loved his toy. And I hated, I think, Tyler, like I said, we've spoken on this many times, but just hated MYP. That's why, curious, Nathan, like you said, you were looking through the compendium, seeing all the pictures, but curious what you got out of all the different versions. What spoke to you?
Well, I mean, obviously the first thing was just all right, well, drastically different designs and Filmation, but kind of reading through what the book said and what you guys are saying now, I'll toss out another question. If you were to pick one episode in Filmation that Clawful appeared in, what would you recommend to anyone out there really wanting to kind of absorb the essence of his character?
It's the episode overall starts out great and then tanks at the end because it turns into a song to save the day. Driel's Return is his first episode. And he's working on his own. Him and Trapjaw find a way to get to Trala and steal the Horn of Evil and attack Grayskull. So that's balls big enough to come in the dump truck when you're introducing a new Evil Warrior to the mix. And he's like, hell with Skeletor, we're taking Castle Grayskull and found a way to get to Trala and back. I think that alone is a pretty damn good introduction to the character. And he's maintained menacing through it. And he physically picks up He-Man into the air, and He-Man has to fight. I mean, struggles a little bit in terms of the story to get out of his grip, and then actually punches him, which is one of the few times we see He-Man punch anybody, even though it's an off-camera punch, but you get the idea from it. But then after that, it turns into where they have to read the song on the Horn of Evil to stop all the crazy stuff from happening. You're like, oh, shit.
Well, is it a case of after this first episode, Clawful sort of falls more into a background character? No.
I mean, things that go bump in the night. That's a good episode. Even though he's only in it for the first half. You got Castle of Heroes, which he's just he's the only evil warrior on staff at Snake Mountain. That episode when Monteague shows up. Then you got Trip to Morania, where he takes on He-Man again 1-on-1, gets his ass kicked. You got Witch and the Warrior, which he takes on He-Man on that one too. So he's portrayed competently every time, and You know,
And I don't
he's
think
either
Skeletor ever spoke down to him either. He never spoke down to him.
only when he catches him in things that go bump in the night, and he says, you know, Skeletor runs things, but one day I'll turn on him, and Skeletor catches him saying that. Other than that, that's the only time, you know, that Skeletor ever speaks or dismissive of Clawful.
Yeah, because didn't even refer to him as like his right hand man, or
Yeah.
you know, basically in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in Castle of Heroes, like he addresses Monte. He's like, "Look, you have your you know group of goofs. You know, I've got Clawful here.
Right.
You know, it's so no, he's always written. And Secret of Grayskull. It's another episode, but his voice is so bad in that episode. Like when I saw that for the first time, like Cobra Khan, Clawful, and Trapjaw, holy shit balls! And then he talks, and you're like, oh god, he sounds terrible in that one. And Frady Cat, he's in that episode too. Whiplash, Merman, Cobra Khan, and Clawful in the same episode. Oh god, it sounds like he's got. Oh yeah, Whiplash, let's go. Oh man, this doesn't sound good.
Gun to your head, if you had to pick one episode to definitely recommend to check out, which one would it be?
Driel's Return.
Okay. Joe, what's
Driel's
your
Return.
answer?
Yeah.
Shit, I don't know him as much as he did. I only remember that episode because not only the horrible song, but I remember just more of Orko's damn gadgets when he reached in his hat.
Oh,
and
yeah. Which is a fun sequence of how pissed off Clawful gets.
Yeah, and a good animation into his face and stuff. But just, yeah, I mean, I guess that could be the most enjoyable one. But, and then there's a little thing, almost like a, not that they were trying to insinuate a love between him and Evil Lynn, but, you know, just that little kind of,
I know Joe has always been big on that sequence, and that was one of the few times I saw him as a kid. I saw that on the Cartoon Express before going to school. I got to see things that go bump in the night, and I got to watch up to that point where they're crossing the beam. And I remember for the years and years and years, I was like, what is that episode where they're crossing and Clawful's in it? And it was that episode. And Joe has always referenced that because he'd always liked the idea of like Clawful and Evil Lynn, like there's this kind of like sense of like attractiveness to each other, but like, you know, she's ugly. He's a crustacean.
Yeah, they're kind of like back to back.
Yeah, it's kind of like that grade school shit where like the girl behind you is like constantly torturing you, but then years later she's like, you know, I liked you, right? And I was like, what? I had no idea.
Yeah, that's kind of how, and it was fun because it's right in front of Skeletor too. Like, you know, I'm sure Evil Lynn is probably like, you know, she's made remarks at He-Man before. So she's hanging around all these other guys. I'm sure they've probably hit on her too, and I'm sure she probably has her favorites of outside of Skeletor. You know, clearly Clawful there. She's probably winked at Triclops here and there.
Yeah, those conversations where Skeletor's just like, He-Man, if things were different, would you do them? And she'd be like, well, yeah. And then he gets all angry about it.
It's like, bitch! And just, you know, pulls out the Havoc staff at her and... Yeah.
For some reason, it's just memorable because it's just the thought of those two being together. It would be different. It's just, you like that. You like seeing something kind of different. It just catches the eye. But yeah. All right, well, that's it with Clawful. I was going to say, we can get, if you want to, the questions.
We spoke more on Clawful. If you go back to episode 15, when there's nothing but audio, we have another conversation about Clawful, which I had to dig because, like, I initially was throwing out Whiplash because we did an episode with Whiplash right before Christmas and no one gave a shit about it. I'm like... shit, like no one cared about our Whiplash discussion or discussion on the vintage toy commercials of the age, which we need to revisit both of those. But I just thought Clawful would be fun to revisit. We'll just pick Clawful because it was so long ago when we discussed him. So
that has been a long time. Hell, there's people that are probably listening right now, and especially in the chat room, that don't even remember us when we were back then just doing audio. They know us probably just here from YouTube and then catch it on later. But anybody here in the chat room, if you have questions you want to hit us with, do it right now. Yep. In the meantime, I guess we could try to hit something back up earlier. I know Kevin Sharp did say that he would like to draw a comic with you. He said, but after September, because he's working on, did it say Dragon Guard or something? He said he was.
Dragon Guard's a project Kevin Sharp is working on. He just did a little promo video that he shared with me. That link is down there. There's an Indiegogo link. Go ahead and check that out, and I'll hit some of the questions because I went ahead and did a search for question marks so I could kind of pick some of the stuff that was going through earlier, and I will read some of the comments on last week's video. Sportimus asks, will the Origins figures come with mini comics too?
Yes. I believe they are.
Okay. Febmon said, if you could score a night of fun and a relationship with an 80s cartoon babe, who would it be? Good or evil? Doesn't matter. Any cartoon franchise... boy or girl cartoon. Mine would probably have to be... Probably go with April O'Neil, honestly. I think.
God, I had a bunch of girls I wanted to hook up with when I was a kid. I mean, from She-Ra to Frosta, Glimmer. Cassis. Pretty much like most of the females in She-Ra Princess of Power alone. But then, I think of I go like Pumara from Thundercats and various women in the X-Men.
Well, which one?
That's 90s.
Rogue would be high up on my list as well.
Yeah, Rogue would probably be my, number one on my list as well.
Joe
had to work around the whole touching thing. Guess you had to be wearing nylon the whole time or something like that. But there's a whole slew of beautiful women in all the various '80s cartoons. I mean, if we go on the list, like just from Thundercats, like Lady Jaye. I always thought Lady Jaye was awesome as a kid. She was cool, but one of the boys. But she was a cool female. So I mean, there's a ton of fictional women that would have been awesome, or that left impressions on me, or that I just thought were hot. We could do a whole discussion on that one, so I can't just give you one, but I think probably the first one come to mind would probably be Frosta or She-Ra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe, what about you?
Yeah, if I was to pick one, maybe for Princess of Power, I know Perfuma, beyond looking good, she'd smell real nice in case doing something
That's a good point.
Interesting.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so Perfuma. As for other cartoons, I love my Dungeons and Dragons, and to have Diana and Sheila, that'd be a double dose right there.
Good
Especially
choice.
Sheila.
Yeah.
Yeah. One's super athletic, the other she's doing stuff, she's invisible. You know what's going on? That could be quite interesting. So,
Joe would be like Ray in Ghostbusters, just having that dream of the ghost going down on him, and he's like, but he's wearing the mask though. So you really can't see the expressions on Joe's face. So they're like, Joe, are you enjoying this?
Yeah.
I like it.
Fans of Power, episode number 220. What cartoon characters would you have sex with? Can we just make that the whole?
We clearly have crossed the boundaries into bullshit, fanboy stuff. We're talking.
That's why it's fun.
I think that at any point, anybody as a kid, especially when you're watching cartoons, you are, as odd as it sounds, you do watch it and you're like, oh, they're really attractive, and that's.
Well, yeah, and plus, I think they drew them that way too. They drew these characters to look. I'm sure girls looked at She-Ra, was like, oh, she's so beautiful, and I want to look like her. Or I want to kiss from her, man. That's how I felt. When she kissed Orko in Talent for Trouble, oh my God, I was so oh man, I want to kiss from She-Ra too. So yeah, it left in her, and I thought Frosta was so beautiful as a kid. I thought, oh man, she's so hot. So yeah, it's a lot of those cartoons. Chitara didn't do anything for me. I don't know why, but I saw Pumara. She did, but when I saw Pumara, I'm like, oh, Pumara's where it's at, dude. Especially if you see her in that later cartoon, the one with the real shitty storyline, she's really hot in that. But there's a whole slew of beautiful women, and Helen from Bionic 6, Mother 1, she's hot too.
Papa Hud's.
Well, with Chitara, it'd be over quick. Probably 10 seconds. This is done.
Wow.
As quick as she is, it's over.
Moving on.
Right.
Papa Hud.
Moving on here.
Papa Hud 69 asks, 1987 Masters movie. Did it make or break Dolph Lundgren's career? I would say for a little bit, arguably, it probably did.
He was doing movies right after it, though. He did Punisher and I Come in Peace, right after it.
Yeah,
I think
but
he
you
did
gotta
Red Scorpion.
Well, you got to think where he came from, Rocky IV, then Masters. It seemed like it was a little bit of a decline. I Come in Peace and Red Scorpion, but for their own varying reasons. I imagine most people watched them and are like, yeah, that sucked. But
also, it's not like Dolph's had the biggest theatrical career too. I honestly he's only got a small handful of films that have made it to theaters. Punisher came out theaters in Europe, but not here in the States, and it was meant to come into theaters. I Come in Peace, I think it came in theaters. I only saw it in the video store.
Yeah.
I started to think of Dolph as a straight to video guy as a kid outside of He-Man and Rocky.
That was kind of the trajectory for his career after that.
Pretty much, but. Even, and that's the thing people got to remember too. William Stout said that movie was making more money each week, and then it got pulled from theaters because Canon couldn't afford to keep it in theaters. So,
and nobody else mentioned that. That was the first time I think.
And everybody that wants to do their bullshit thought or opinion on YouTube video or their bullshit retrospective video on He-Man ignores that or doesn't, or isn't aware
I don't
of
think
it.
they know. I don't think they know.
Most people don't, and that's what
That was
bothers
the
me.
first time.
Oh God,
You know?
yeah. It just made you feel like what that movie could have done for Mattel had it been, distributed by a more competent company.
Yeah,
Even though I love Canon Films,
yeah.
but
Well, I mean, Canon Films at the beginning, as like towards the end, you kind of see the difference there because their budgets got a lot smaller. But yeah, I think back then a lot of people with their property should have been smarter about who they distributed to, because that came back to bite them in the ass. Zentron asks, if you were in charge of executing a character from Netflix She-Ra, which character would it be? Why and how would you execute him? I would say
All of them.
All of them.
Hordak, because honestly, you can if you make the villain such a prominent and unforgettable part of the show, it makes, even though everybody else is written so shitty and designed so poorly, but if you write Hordak as the way he should be, you at least have got your poorly executed heroes working towards like a legitimate goal. When you got Hordak acting like a pussy, you got nothing to fight for, And I just feel like, yeah, I
don't even hear nobody talk about that cartoon no more.
And it wouldn't save the show, but it's. I mean, because we all know that show was not going to make a lasting impression.
Oh,
we
no.
all know that.
Like I said,
but
nobody
Hordak would be
discusses
the
it
one
no more.
character.
Yeah, it's done. Like I said, nobody talks about it. I don't see any of the groups that even are for that show. Nobody's talking about it. It's just
because
it's
everybody wanted to fight the good fight. Because if you didn't like it, you hated gay people, you hated women.
We just hate
God
poor
forbid you
storylines.
no, it sucked.
Yeah, we just don't like bad storylines, and we don't like poorly executed characters, terrible animation, terrible redesigns that look nothing from their source material. It's so derived, so far removed from the original, it might as well be something else. But we're not going to start on that. We'll get to another question.
Yeah,
so you go ahead, Nick. What else?
Well, Tyler's camera went on the fritz again. He got so angry that it I'm trying to
He got so angry. He took over the whole.
Sky can't harness the power of tea,
Tyler, what's funny is right now looking at the screen, it's just you covering everything, and there's a little crumb of Nathan off the side. There's nothing else. It's just Tyler just got so mad. Boom! The angrier he gets, the bigger he gets, just like the Incredible Hulk, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, while
I'm trying to figure out. It's not.
Well, you keep trying to figure it out. While you do that, I'll hit another question from the chat room.
There we go.
Sean said, "Question: what vintage character do you dislike, or what vintage character do you dislike? Would you like to see get a one and done story that change your opinion of them?" I read it exactly like you said, Sean. I'm trying to grasp what.
Well, I don't have a vintage character that I dislike. I feel like Snout Spout wasn't given a very strong mini comic. I don't think, obviously, Montana was not given a very good one.
Poor Rio Blast didn't get a good one. Rio Blast
definitely could have been, it was ugly, like artwork and the story. Writing them up was like...
Got a good story from the UK, but not here, unfortunately. So
not here.
There's a lot of characters.
Yeah, there's quite a few, but there's no vintage character that I dislike. They just weren't given the best. The Cosmic Key, there's another one. Son of a bitch.
Oh, God. What was that, 5 pages or something? Isn't that one of the shortest?
It's the shortest mini comic that's ever been done, yeah.
Oh, what a disaster. I feel so bad for that damn comic. Grim has a question. This is the one that was asked earlier, which I'll just rant on real quick, and then, of course, you guys can too. Grim said, so, guys, what are your thoughts on the attack on Thundercats fans that took place in a Teen Titans Go episode, Teen Titans Roar? Well, this is, I didn't know if you've seen it, Tyler or Nathan, but you see Lion-O, our 80s Lion-O, pops up in that episode and basically says something along the lines of, poopy fans have, just have poopy ideas if they don't like it. It's like shitting on us our 80s fans, like that we didn't like Thundercats Roar. So they had to have Lion-O come tell us that this new stuff is good, that he actually approves what they're doing. Then in the same episode, I believe, there's a cave scene where you see Snarf and you see the 2011, I think 2011, I'll make sure I said it right, of Lion-O from the new Thundercats. And what you see, which is twisted, and I'm not sure if they meant this purposely, you see a skeleton of Panthro there. And you see, the nunchucks, but the voice actor for, I believe, the 2011 Thundercats for Panthro, he died. and I was like, is this a knock at that? I was like, if it is, this is the most twisted thing in the world. But it's such a disrespect, not only to the fans, but I mean, obviously to people in general and the lives of human beings. So I don't like when they do that pandering. Don't try to let's put in the 80s stuff into here to tell you why it's good because the 80s Lion-O is saying it's good and then calling us fans basically, like with poopy ideas or poopy minds, however he phrased it. It pissed me off and it pissed
Well, I'm
off.
sure Larry Kenney got a nice paycheck to say that because Larry Kenney is.
And I don't know, did he do the voice? That's the one thing I couldn't.
I don't know.
If he did, I hope he didn't. God, I hope he didn't do the voice.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he popped up on Family Guy, and a lot of those original voice actors have come back for like small cameos. I could see them doing that because these assholes who currently write, these current cartoons that aren't well received by the masses. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Grimbot corrected me. He said, no, Joe, he said, that's the original Panthro voice actor died. I thought they said it was the one from the new cartoon, but even still.
Grandpa Huxtable, did the voice of Panther. Yeah, he passed away a few years ago.
Okay, well, that's then either way, it's a disrespect if they're mocking the death of a voice actor from either of the cartoons. But I'm glad you corrected me, Grim. But I found it very tasteless for them to even show something like that. So I don't know what's going through their minds. They might even say, "Oh, we're just thinking it was fun to put in, Panthro from the original thing, and he's just dead." But I don't care how you do it, whether it's a knock at this, but especially if it's the knock on a life of somebody that really, in life passed away, a human being that's. It's sick, it's twisted, and it makes you wonder what the hell is in the minds of the people.
I will say this. Obviously, you're not writing very good stories if you got enough time to write a segment in your story that gives the middle finger to adult fans who've continued to keep all these properties that you currently have a job at and wouldn't have a job if people are in our age range and older didn't continue to enjoy a lot of these cartoons and comic book properties that have survived all this time because of people like us. And when you come along and shit on it, because you hire people who really aren't interested in telling serious stories, it's all about humor and everything nowadays. If you're spending time to work in a jab at adult fans because you don't like, the fact that we're not accepting of your shitty humor and your really poorly, I won't say written stories because it's just drivel. It's like the kind of shit you find in a bathroom stall next to like a picture of like a big dick. Like, oh, wow, wasn't that enlightening? Wow, I've never seen that before. Then clearly you don't have much to offer in terms of a new Teen Titans series if this is what you're taking time to do.
And here's the exact quote that Zentron did put up. It's, I guess, what Lino said was, "You have shown me that Thundercats Roar is a worthy successor. Those who disagree," and he says, "Those who disagree."
Did you say Teen Titans or Thundercats Roar?
Well, the thing, I thought it was supposed to be in Thundercats Roar, but for back up there, I thought somebody said that they put it in Teen Titans Roar because Teen Titans were there as well. They were there, and the Thundercats Roar were there, so maybe it was an episode of Teen Titans. I'll be honest, I didn't want to watch it.
Okay, well, all right, then I just say this is everybody at Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network who clearly are just like, these people are stuck with this piece of shit cartoon, and they're mad at us.
Yeah, man, us to put that comment because he says those who disagree have poopy mouths with poopy opinions. I was like, no, we don't. We're fans that love this property. When we see it disrespected and given this kind of treatment, you bet you're going to be mad. And with that kind of comment, along with what they've shown in it, they're not going to gain any more fans. They're only going to piss more people off.
I balk at Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers because they're morons for doing, and they're just mad because this cartoon is not going to take off. I get mad when somebody wants to take a picture of their child watching it so they can share it and say, my kid doesn't like it, or my kid thinks it's kind of cool. Like, why are you doing this? You're just going to get attacked by everybody. Like stop trying to act like, my kid, like, just stop. It's irrelevant. It doesn't, if your child likes it, fine. But I'm sorry.
It's a crossover episode, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, well, who gives a shit?
All right.
It's just they're just mad because we don't like it. We're not going to accept it, and they're stuck with it.
Yeah, and Brad Collins did have something for you. He said, just popped in to say hi, glad. He said, I own a copy of Tyler's mini comic that he sent me. He said, I love the nod to the vintage card back with Man-at-Arms in the swamp. So Brad wanted to say that to you, Tyler.
I'm glad you enjoy that there, mate.
And I do have a nose. Go ahead, Nathan.
I was just going to kind of sum up with the comments on last week's video. Most of them are like, hey, it was cool you guys did that Ladybird book. They kind of gave like their memories with it. And Sean said, I'm of mixed thoughts about the Lords of Power concept. I appreciate such a deep cut and relatively recent find as a con exclusive. I just feel like authentic replica of the original 1981 sculpts would be preferable. Beastman is the worst translation since the body base is not as broad or stunted as the original sculpts. At least the others look more Alcala, especially Man-at-Arms. And then kind of there's a lot to say here, and I won't read.
Sean had a big look report. We would love and appreciate it. You did give a line. He's here in the chat room as well.
I'm not gonna read that verbatim, but Tyler, did you have any thoughts about that being announced as a con exclusive? Your opinions?
I was like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. Yeah, I'm like, I don't need more like variants. Like it's, it would have been meant more if it was like Lizardman, Icer, Fangman, and Strongarm, or something like that. That would like, oh my god, like, all right, Val, I gotta have it, But nah, it's just like that's kind of cool. But it was pretty much like an afterthought. It was just kind of like, At least it wasn't, it was something somewhat different than what they released at Toy Fair.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's kind of it.
Grim2 just sent me the images here, and basically it is like original How We Know and Love Lion-O kind of descending from the heavens to talk down to the Thundercats Roar and the Teen Titans Go group, and says all of that stuff like he's telling them that they are worthy.
It just shows you how unoriginal and lazy that Warner Brothers really is. That if we get Larry Kenney to come in and do voice work on this and denounce the adult fans who've come down on this cartoon that got buried for so long, it took them forever to release. Whatever.
Yeah,
I balk at it. It is not a threat. I could care less because it doesn't mean anything because it's still not going to help.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show, like, aside from these certain things, I didn't even know Thundercats Roar was even, like, on TV, so that kind of...
Nobody did. Nobody knew that. It just popped up this...
Let's go ahead and wrap her up. We've been going for a lot longer than what we usually do. So
yeah, we did, and we're sorry if we didn't get to all your questions. We can get to some, we'll get to that next week. But yeah, we had a really good full episode. I mean, it was fun. We had a blast. Sure, we get a little pissed off at times, but we do that about anything. Anybody can. You get mad for something you don't like, you say it. Like I said, we have people saying about our show. Remember,
sometimes it felt like a little switch. It happens.
But hey, if that's what their thought, then go ahead. You can say that too. But we do appreciate that everybody that popped up here in the chat room. So I just want to make sure you like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, so you can always get notified when we go live. And until next time, have a powerful day.
Hiding. What do I have to fear from you, worker ants, scurrying about with their pitiful weapons, afraid of the purity of unarmed combat?
Nathan, I'm going to pass it to you. Do you know this, I hope? Don't say what you always say.
I'm not. Can you give us a hint?
Here's the next line. Come out from behind the curtain, wizard. Let's see how pure your combat really is. Come on!
I feel like I need to go through Tyler's Facebook page and look through his cover photo.
No, I have not watched this movie in a while. It's just like it was just a line that I'm like I have memorized.
What's the?
No, so it's exactly what he wants. No, T-Hawk, that's what we both want. Am I right, Bison?
Oh, good God! Okay. Hey, and it proves that everybody can like or hate something. Hated that damn movie, but Tyler loves it. That's great, but God, do I hate that movie.
I hated it for a while. I loved it when it first came out, then I shit all over it, and I have come full circle.
It is the best G.I. Joe live-action film, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go, people. If you guys don't like it for Street Fighter, look at it as the G.I. Joe movie we should have gotten instead of that piece of shit Steven Summers with the pubescent Channing Tatum.
Yeah. Sean did pop in real quick. Dingalorian already answered the question, but Sean, the link is down below if you want to download the Tyler's mini comic. It'll be there.
Yeah, let me know what you think.
Digital download. And that goes to anybody out there watching after the fact that catches it. Check out that link, download it, let us know, comment below, let us know your thoughts on the mini comic.
And I appreciate Joe and Nathan's kind words on the comic as well. Like they said some stuff I really appreciated, and they didn't have to say, and I'm grateful for it. So
well,
thank you, and thank you for everybody who followed along on that, because I'm proud of it. If this is my only one of my few times to do anything He-Man related, I'm glad I got to do something. So
he paid me off. I got my chapstick right here. My lips are starting to get a little chappy after a while.
But it's the chapstick brand though. I didn't get him like the cheap, like off brand. It is the official chapstick brand though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I
Trying to
get
catch
cherry
Roar
stick.
sucks.
I get cherry stick over there at Dollar Tree. They have,
Of course
like,
you
the
do,
fake
Joe.
But I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.